Imagine creating something worth hundreds of billions, then walking away forever. That's exactly what Satoshi Nakamoto did. While you and I worry about our bank accounts, this person built an entirely new form of money, then vanished. No interviews, no victory laps, no spending sprees, just silence. But here's what haunts investigators. Satoshi left clues everywhere, in his code, in his messages, even in the timing of when he went to sleep. We're talking about Bitcoin, a trillion-dollar currency that started with 9 pages posted to a cryptography mailing list on October 31st, 2008. But here's what gets me. Satoshi owns between 750,000 and 1.1 million of these coins. That's tens of billions just sitting there, untouched. What kind of person walks away from that kind of wealth, and why? The answer might surprise you. October 31st, 2008, Halloween night. While kids trick-or-treated and adults handed out candy, someone was about to change the world forever. The banks were in crisis. Lehman Brothers had collapsed on September 15th, just weeks earlier. AIG received its first bailout on September 16th. People were losing their homes, their jobs, their life savings, and the government. They were writing checks to the same banks that caused the mess. Picture this moment. Families sitting around kitchen tables, staring at foreclosure notices. Workers cleaning out their desks after decades of loyal service. Retirees watching their pensions disappear overnight. The system that promised security had betrayed them. But somewhere in the world, someone was watching this unfold with a different kind of anger. Not helpless rage, but determined fury that would build something entirely new. That someone was Satoshi Nakamoto. And on that Halloween night, he published 9 pages that would shake the financial world to its core. The document appeared on the Metzdowd cryptography mailing list. No fanfare. No press release. Just a simple subject line. Bitcoin. A peer-to-peer electronic cash system. 9 pages. That's all it took to reimagine money itself. But here's what gets me about this timing. It wasn't coincidence. It was strategy. Think about it. The world had just watched the most powerful financial institutions on Earth nearly destroy the global economy. Trust in banks was at an all-time low. People were desperate for alternatives. And Satoshi? He was ready with an answer that no one saw coming. The white paper outlined something revolutionary. What if you could send money directly to anyone, anywhere, without a bank? What if no government could freeze your account? What if the system was so transparent that every transaction was recorded, but so private that no one could trace it back to you? It sounded impossible, but Satoshi had figured out how to make it real. Few people realized that Satoshi didn't just write a technical document. He wrote a manifesto. Every paragraph was a quiet rebellion against the system that had just failed so spectacularly. As he put it in the opening lines, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. This wasn't just theory, it was a direct challenge to eliminate trusted third parties entirely. The cryptography community took notice immediately. These weren't casual observers. They were experts who had been thinking about digital money for decades. Many had tried to solve the same problems Satoshi tackled. Most had failed. But this paper was different. It wasn't just theoretical. It was a blueprint that could actually work. But here's where it gets really interesting. Satoshi didn't stop with theory. On January 3rd, 2009, he mined the very first Bitcoin block, the Genesis block. And hidden inside that block was a message that investigators are still analyzing today. The exact text read, "The Time 03 Jan's 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks." This wasn't random, this was personal. Satoshi was making a statement. While the Chancellor of the Exchequer prepared another bailout for failing banks, Satoshi was launching a system that would make bailouts impossible. No central authority to fail. No executives to pay bonuses while companies collapsed. No politicians to choose winners and losers. What drives someone to create something that didn't exist before? Most people complain about problems and hope someone else fixes them. But Satoshi saw the financial crisis and thought, I can build something better. While millions suffered from a broken system, he was quietly coding a solution that would outlast governments and central banks. The revolution wasn't violent. There were no protests or manifestos, just code. Clean, elegant code that solved problems economists thought were unsolvable. Satoshi proved that one person with the right knowledge and determination could challenge the most powerful institutions on Earth. The Genesis block message wasn't just historical reference, it was a declaration of independence. Satoshi was saying the old system failed, and I'm building the replacement. Every time someone opens their Bitcoin wallet, they're participating in that rebellion. But here's what haunts me about this story. Satoshi built this incredible system, embedded it with his anger about financial injustice, and then disappeared. The revolutionary who started it all became a ghost in his own revolution. Yet even ghosts leave traces. Every keystroke tells a story. Every line of code reveals something about who wrote it. And when investigators started analyzing Satoshi's digital trail, they discovered something fascinating. Genius leaves fingerprints everywhere.
This part of the program is sponsored by Via Nature, where nature meets innovation. Visit vianature.com. Your planet-friendly goodies are just a click away.
The first clue came from something simple: spelling. While most people in the crypto world used American English, Satoshi consistently wrote color instead of color and optimize instead of optimize. These weren't typos, they were habits, deep patterns that revealed something crucial about his background. But it wasn't just spelling. His writing had a rhythm that felt distinctly British. He used phrases that sounded natural in London, but odd in Silicon Valley. When other programmers wrote casual forum posts, Satoshi maintained a formal tone that suggested education, maybe even academic training. The technical language was another giveaway. Satoshi didn't just understand cryptography, he spoke it fluently. His explanations used precise terminology that only someone with serious expertise would know. This wasn't a basement hacker learning as he went. This was someone who had spent years studying the field. Forum posts revealed personality traits that made Satoshi feel human. He was polite, almost to a fault. When critics attacked Bitcoin, he responded with measured explanations rather than angry rants. But you could sense his frustration growing when people misunderstood his vision. He wanted to be understood, not just celebrated. The timing of his posts became crucial evidence. Investigators analyzed thousands of messages, looking for patterns in when Satoshi was active online. Sleep schedules are hard to fake. They reveal where someone lives, what their daily routine looks like, how they structure their life. And here's where it gets interesting. Satoshi's posts clustered around specific hours, not the scattered pattern you'd expect from someone trying to hide their location, but consistent behavior that suggested he was living in a particular time zone, following a regular schedule. His choice of words was fascinating. Satoshi used uncommon terms like fensible and hosed that set him apart from other cypherpunks. The word fensible was particularly unusual. Investigators found only a handful of instances in major newspaper archives. It was like finding a rare fingerprint at a crime scene. But the biggest clue came from something technical people noticed immediately. Satoshi's code comments followed corporate standards. He wrote documentation like someone who had worked on large software projects. His error handling was professional. His architecture showed experience with distributed systems. This wasn't amateur work. The code structure suggested someone who had spent years in enterprise software development, someone who understood not just how to make things work, but how to make them work reliably at scale. The linguistic analysis went deeper. Experts studied Satoshi's sentence structure, his vocabulary choices, his punctuation habits. He used two spaces after periods, a detail that suggested he learned to type on older systems. His grammar was precise, almost academic. Few people realized that Satoshi's writing style was so distinctive that investigators could identify patterns invisible to casual readers. The way he explained complex concepts suggested teaching experience. His patience with newcomers hinted at someone accustomed to mentoring others. But here's what made the mystery deeper. Each new clue narrowed the field while raising more questions. The British spelling suggested UK origins. The corporate coding style pointed to tech industry experience. The academic tone hinted at university connections. The timing patterns eliminated entire continents from consideration. You can see how these digital fingerprints started painting a picture, not of a shadowy hacker but of someone with serious credentials. Someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. Someone who understood both the technical challenges and the political implications of what he was building. The personality that emerged from his posts was complex. Polite but firm, patient but determined. Someone who believed deeply in his vision, but wasn't arrogant about it. He asked for feedback, incorporated suggestions, and admitted when he was wrong. What's fascinating is how human Satoshi became through these digital traces. His frustration when people suggested Bitcoin was just another payment system. His excitement when early adopters understood the bigger picture. His concern when governments started paying attention. The linguistic analysis revealed something that changes everything about how we think of Bitcoin's creation. The writing patterns, the technical terminology, the formal tone, they all pointed to someone with an academic or corporate background. Someone who had spent years studying cryptography, not just learning it. This wasn't a lonely genius working in isolation. This was someone embedded in the professional world of computer science. Someone who understood both the technical challenges and the institutional problems Bitcoin needed to solve. But all these clues were just the beginning, because what happened next would reveal something even more intriguing about Satoshi's world. He was about to make contact with someone who would change everything. January 12, 2009. 9 days after Bitcoin's birth, Satoshi had created something revolutionary, but it existed only on his computer. No one else had tried it. No one knew if it would actually work. Then he made a decision that changed everything. He reached out to someone who would become Bitcoin's first believer. That someone was Hal Finney, and this wasn't just any programmer Satoshi picked randomly from a forum. Hal was a legend in the cypherpunk community. For decades he had been fighting battles most people didn't even know existed. While others talked about digital privacy, Hal built the tools to make it real. Think about what this moment meant for Satoshi. He had spent months, maybe years, perfecting his creation. But until someone else used it, Bitcoin was just elegant code sitting on a hard drive. Sending that first transaction wasn't just a technical test, it was an act of faith. 10 Bitcoins. That's what Satoshi sent to Hal. Today that would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But back then, they were just numbers in a database. Digital coins with no market value, no exchange rate, no way to buy anything real. Yet both men understood they were making history.
This part of the program is sponsored by The Tria, oasis of comfort with a touch of luxury. Visit thetria.com. Your dream home vibe is just a scroll away.
But here's what gets me about this choice. Satoshi could have sent Bitcoin to anyone willing to download the software. Instead, he chose Hal Finney specifically. This wasn't coincidence. This was strategy. Hal had been working on digital cash concepts long before Bitcoin existed. He understood the problems Satoshi was trying to solve. He knew why previous attempts had failed. When he received that first Bitcoin transaction, he wasn't just getting digital coins, he was receiving validation that someone had finally cracked the code. The transaction worked flawlessly. No bank approval needed. No clearinghouse delays. No fees charged by intermediaries. Just pure peer-to-peer transfer of value. In that moment, both men realized they had witnessed something that would reshape how money worked forever. What happened next reveals something fascinating about their relationship. They didn't just celebrate and move on. They began collaborating. Hal started testing Bitcoin rigorously, finding bugs, suggesting improvements. His feedback helped Satoshi refine the system during those crucial early days. Their correspondence shows mutual respect that went beyond typical developer relationships. Satoshi valued Hal's technical insights. Hal appreciated Satoshi's vision. They were building something together, even though one of them remained completely anonymous. But investigators noticed something strange in how they communicated. The timing of their messages showed an unusual pattern. When Satoshi posted updates, Hal responded almost immediately. When Hal asked technical questions, Satoshi provided detailed answers within hours. This wasn't the scattered communication you'd expect between strangers. This felt coordinated, like they were working more closely than their public posts suggested. Were they talking privately? Had they planned this collaboration in advance? The technical discussions between them revealed deep compatibility in their thinking. They shared similar views on cryptography, similar concerns about government surveillance, similar hopes for what digital money could accomplish. It was like watching two minds that understood each other perfectly. And here's where the mystery deepens. In 2009, just months after that first transaction, Hal was diagnosed with ALS, a devastating disease that would gradually rob him of movement, speech, everything. But even as his health declined, he continued working on Bitcoin. The timing haunts investigators. As Hal's condition worsened, Satoshi began withdrawing from the project. Coincidence, or something deeper? Some researchers wonder if the two events were connected in ways we still don't understand. Hal consistently denied being Satoshi, but his denials only fueled more speculation. He had the technical skills, he had the cypherpunk background, he understood Bitcoin's implications better than almost anyone. And that first transaction, maybe it wasn't Satoshi sending coins to Hal, maybe it was Hal sending coins to himself. The transaction wasn't just sending digital coins, it was passing the torch to someone who could carry Bitcoin forward. Hal became Bitcoin's first advocate, first bug tester, first believer. Without him, Bitcoin might have remained Satoshi's private experiment. Looking back, this was the real turning point. Not just the first transaction, but the first partnership. Satoshi created Bitcoin, but Hal helped prove it worked. Together, they launched something that neither could have accomplished alone. But investigators weren't satisfied with just understanding the human connections. They wanted harder evidence. And they were about to find it in the most unexpected place, hidden in the rhythm of Satoshi's daily life. Sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest secrets. While investigators chased complex theories about Satoshi's identity, one Swiss software engineer named Stefan Thomas decided to focus on something much simpler. When does Satoshi sleep? It sounds almost ridiculous. But Stefan understood something crucial about human nature. Our habits betray us. We can disguise our writing style, fake our interests, even lie about our background. But sleep? Sleep follows patterns that are nearly impossible to fake consistently over years. Stefan gathered over 500 of Satoshi's forum posts from the early Bitcoin days. Each post had a timestamp. Each timestamp told a story about when Satoshi was awake, alert, and actively working on Bitcoin. What Stefan found would change how investigators thought about the mystery forever. The data showed something remarkable. There was a clear drop in Satoshi's posting activity between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. 6 hours of almost complete silence. Day after day, week after week. Even on weekends when most people break their routine, Satoshi maintained this pattern. Think about what this means. If you're trying to hide your identity, you might post at random times to throw people off. You might deliberately stay up late or wake up early to confuse investigators. But Satoshi didn't do that. He followed a natural sleep schedule with the consistency of someone living a normal life. But here's where it gets interesting. Satoshi claimed to be from Japan. If he was really living in Japan Standard Time, those quiet hours would fall between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., right in the middle of the afternoon. Who sleeps from 2 to 8 p.m. every single day? Even shift workers don't maintain patterns that consistent. The data was telling a different story than Satoshi wanted people to believe. His posting patterns matched someone living in the UK or Europe perfectly. During those quiet hours in GMT, it would be nighttime in Britain. Normal sleeping hours for someone with a regular job or academic schedule. Stefan's analysis eliminated entire continents from possibility. North America? The timing didn't work. Asia? The patterns made no sense. Australia? Completely wrong. The data pointed to one region with overwhelming clarity, somewhere in the GMT time zone or very close to it. You can see how this single discovery changed everything. Investigators had been searching the entire world for Satoshi. Now they could focus on a much smaller area. The time zone data narrowed the hunt from 7 billion people to maybe a few hundred million. But the pattern revealed something else that investigators found fascinating. This wasn't the scattered posting schedule of a team working in shifts. If multiple people were sharing the Satoshi identity across different time zones, you'd expect posts at all hours. Instead, the data suggested one person with one consistent schedule. Few people realize that sleep patterns are like fingerprints. They're deeply personal and remarkably consistent. Stefan's chart didn't just show when Satoshi was asleep. It revealed his entire daily routine. Someone who went to bed around midnight GMT and woke up around 6 a.m. Someone living a structured, probably professional life. The consistency held true even during Bitcoin's most critical moments. When the network faced technical problems, when forums exploded with questions, when early adopters needed immediate help, Satoshi still disappeared during those 6 hours. His sleep schedule mattered more than Bitcoin emergencies. But then Stefan noticed something that complicated the picture. There were anomalies. Occasional posts at unusual hours that broke the established pattern. A message at 3 a.m. GMT here. A response at dawn there. Not many, but enough to make investigators wonder. Were these intentional attempts at misdirection? Maybe Satoshi realized his posting patterns could reveal his location and deliberately stayed up late or woke up early to confuse trackers. Or maybe they represented genuine schedule changes. Travel, work demands, personal emergencies that disrupted his normal routine. What made the mystery deeper was how the anomalies were distributed. They weren't random. They seemed to cluster around important Bitcoin milestones. Software releases, major forum discussions, responses to technical crises. Like Satoshi was willing to break his sleep schedule only when Bitcoin truly needed him. Here's what gets me about Stefan's discovery. He wasn't looking for complex technical clues or analyzing sophisticated writing patterns. He just asked a simple question: when does this person sleep? And that question revealed more about Satoshi's identity than years of other investigations. The data pointed to specific regions with overwhelming clarity, but it also raised new questions. If Satoshi was so careful about maintaining anonymity, why didn't he randomize his posting times? Was this an oversight, or did maintaining a normal sleep schedule matter more to him than perfect operational security? The hunt was narrowing. Investigators now had geographic boundaries, linguistic clues, and behavioral patterns. They felt closer than ever to solving the mystery. But sometimes, getting close to the truth can be dangerous, especially when innocent people get caught in the crossfire. March 6, 2014. A quiet Thursday morning in Temple City, California. Dorian Prentice Satoshi Nakamoto was probably planning another ordinary day. Maybe some gardening. Maybe reading the newspaper. Maybe working on one of his model trains. He had no idea that his life was about to explode. That morning, Newsweek published an article that would change everything. Reporter Leah McGrath Goodman claimed she had solved the greatest mystery in the financial world. She had found Satoshi Nakamoto, and he was living in a modest house in suburban Los Angeles, collecting unemployment benefits and struggling to make ends meet. The evidence seemed compelling at first glance. Here was a man named Satoshi Nakamoto. He had an engineering background. He had worked on classified defense projects. His family described him as having libertarian views and encouraging his daughter to start her own business, not under the government's thumb. When times got tough in the early 1990s, he had turned away from mainstream thinking. But the most damning piece of evidence came from Dorian's own mouth. When Goodman asked him about Bitcoin, he responded, "I am no longer involved in that, and I cannot discuss it. It's been turned over to other people. They are in charge of it now. I no longer have any connection." Those words ignited a firestorm. Within hours, the media descended on Dorian's quiet neighborhood, like a pack of wolves. News vans lined his street, cameras pointed at his front door. Reporters knocked constantly, shouting questions about cryptocurrency and billions of dollars. His peaceful retirement had become a nightmare. The 64-year-old man who emerged from his house looked confused and frightened. This wasn't the confident genius who had built Bitcoin. This was someone who seemed genuinely bewildered by all the attention. When reporters asked about his billions in Bitcoin, he looked at them like they were speaking a foreign language. What happened next revealed the horrible truth. Dorian had never heard of Bitcoin before Goodman's interview. He had completely misunderstood her question. When she asked about Bitcoin, he thought she was asking about his classified work for military contractors. That's what he meant when he said he was no longer involved in that, and couldn't discuss it. The man who was supposed to be worth billions was actually collecting unemployment benefits. The engineering genius who had revolutionized money was living in a modest house, worrying about his next paycheck. The libertarian who had challenged the financial system was just an ordinary retiree who wanted to be left alone. Picture being in Dorian's shoes. You wake up one morning as a private citizen, By afternoon, the world thinks you're worth billions. Strangers are calling you a genius, others are demanding you explain complex financial systems you've never heard of. Your front yard is full of cameras, your phone won't stop ringing. The Bitcoin community watched this unfold with growing horror. They realized what was happening. An innocent man was being destroyed by a case of mistaken identity. This wasn't their mysterious creator. This was a victim of sloppy journalism and public fascination with solving mysteries. Something beautiful happened next. The Bitcoin community rallied around Dorian. They raised money to help him recover from the harassment. They organized fundraising campaigns. They sent messages of support. They understood that protecting privacy mattered more than solving mysteries. But the damage was done. Dorian's health suffered from the stress. He was forced into hiding. His peaceful retirement was shattered. The man who had done nothing wrong, except share a name with a pseudonym, became the first casualty in the hunt for Satoshi. The Newsweek article became a cautionary tale. It showed how desperate people had become to solve the Bitcoin mystery. It revealed the consequences of speculation presented as fact. It demonstrated how quickly someone's life could be destroyed by a single wrong newspaper article. The hunt for Satoshi had claimed its first innocent victim, but it also revealed something powerful about the Bitcoin community. They cared more about protecting people than solving mysteries. They understood that some secrets are worth keeping. Dorian Nakamoto's story became a reminder that behind every mystery are real people who deserve privacy and respect. But the incident also highlighted something investigators had been overlooking. Maybe they were searching for the wrong thing entirely. Maybe Satoshi wasn't working alone. The hunt had been focused on finding one mysterious genius, but what if the real story was about something much bigger? Long before Bitcoin existed, there was a secret community of digital rebels who saw the future coming. They called themselves cypherpunks. While most people worried about Y2K and dial-up internet speeds, these visionaries were fighting battles for privacy and freedom that nobody else understood yet. Picture this. It's the 1990s. Email is still new. Online banking doesn't exist. Most people think the internet is just a place to chat and look up information. But the cypherpunks, they saw something different. They saw a world where governments could monitor every transaction, read every message, and control every aspect of digital life. So they started building tools to fight back. Not with protests or politics, but with math. Pure, unbreakable math that even governments couldn't defeat. They believed cryptography could change the world. They were right. For decades, brilliant minds in this community had been trying to solve the same problem that would eventually become Bitcoin. How do you create digital money that works without banks? How do you prevent double spending? How do you build trust between strangers without a central authority? One after another, they tried and failed. Each attempt taught them something new. Each failure brought them closer to the answer. But the breakthrough remained elusive. Then there was Nick Szabo, a computer scientist who understood that digital money needed more than just cryptography. It needed a philosophy. In 1998, he published a concept called BitGold. The similarities to Bitcoin are stunning. BitGold would use proof-of-work puzzles to create scarcity. It would be decentralized. It would eliminate the need for trusted third parties. Sound familiar? Szabo had essentially described Bitcoin 9 years before Satoshi published his white paper. The concepts were so similar that investigators have spent years wondering if Nick Szabo and Satoshi Nakamoto are the same person. But Szabo wasn't working alone. The cypherpunk community was full of brilliant minds tackling different pieces of the same puzzle. Adam Back was working on something called Hashcash, a proof-of-work system designed to prevent email spam. Little did he know that his creation would become the foundation for Bitcoin mining. The pieces were scattered across the community like fragments of a broken mirror. Szabo had the economic theory, Back had the proof-of-work mechanism. Other cypherpunks had contributed ideas about digital signatures, timestamp servers, and decentralized networks. But nobody had figured out how to put all the pieces together. Until Satoshi. Here's what gets me about Bitcoin's creation. Satoshi didn't invent everything from scratch. He was standing on the shoulders of giants. The genius wasn't in creating new technology. It was in combining existing ideas in a way that actually worked. Think about it. Satoshi took Szabo's economic vision, Bak's proof-of-work system, and other cypherpunk innovations, then assembled them into something that solved the digital money problem once and for all. It was like watching someone complete a jigsaw puzzle that the entire community had been working on for years. But here's where the mystery deepens. The way Satoshi combined these ideas wasn't random. He understood the strengths and weaknesses of each component. He knew exactly which pieces to use and which to discard. This wasn't the work of an outsider stumbling onto solutions. This was someone deeply embedded in the cypherpunk community. The evidence became overwhelming when investigators studied Satoshi's early communications. He didn't reach out to random programmers or cryptocurrency enthusiasts. He contacted specific people with specific expertise, people who had been working on these problems for years. Adam Back was one of the first people Satoshi emailed. This wasn't coincidence. Back had invented Hashcash, which Bitcoin's mining system directly uses. Satoshi specifically sought out the creator of a key component he needed. The pattern repeated with other cypherpunks. Satoshi contacted Hal Finney, who had been working on digital cash systems. He reached out to Wei Dai, creator of B-Money, another Bitcoin predecessor. These weren't random connections. They were strategic relationships with people who understood the vision. You can see how this changes everything about Bitcoin's origin story. This wasn't one person having a brilliant idea in isolation. This was the culmination of decades of work by an entire community. Satoshi was the conductor, but the cypherpunks were the orchestra. The mystery wasn't just about one person. It was about a movement that had been building toward this moment for decades. But investigators were about to discover something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Satoshi's background. Code doesn't lie. While Satoshi could disguise his writing style and fake his location, his programming revealed truths he probably never intended to share. When expert programmers finally got their hands on Bitcoin's original source code, they discovered something that shattered every assumption about who had built this revolutionary system. The myth of the basement hacker started crumbling immediately. This wasn't amateur work cobbled together by someone learning as they went. The code structure was professional, methodical. It followed corporate standards that only someone with serious industry experience would know. Think about what this means. When most people imagine Satoshi, they picture a lone genius working in isolation, maybe a college student pulling all-nighters, maybe a libertarian hacker sticking it to the system from his garage. But the code told a completely different story. The error handling was the first giveaway. Amateur programmers write code that works when everything goes right. Professional programmers write code that works when everything goes wrong. Bitcoin's original software anticipated problems that hadn't even happened yet. It included safeguards for scenarios most developers never think about. The documentation patterns revealed even more. Satoshi wrote comments like someone who expected other people to read his code, not just casual notes to remind himself what functions did. Detailed explanations that would help team members understand complex systems. This wasn't the work of someone planning to keep Bitcoin as a personal project. But here's where it gets really interesting. The architecture showed deep understanding of distributed systems. This isn't knowledge you pick up from reading programming books. This is expertise you develop by working on large-scale software projects, by solving problems that only emerge when millions of people use your system simultaneously. The variable naming conventions told their own story. Satoshi used something called Hungarian notation, a style popular among Windows programmers in the 1990s. This detail suggests he was probably on the older side, someone who had learned to code during an earlier era of software development. You can see how these technical clues painted a picture of someone with decades of professional experience. Not a young rebel challenging the system, but an experienced engineer who understood both the problems Bitcoin needed to solve and the technical challenges of building something that could actually work. The code's sophistication was staggering. Bitcoin needed to handle digital signatures, cryptographic hashing, peer-to-peer networking, and database management, all while preventing double spending and maintaining security across a distributed network. This isn't a weekend project for someone learning to program. But there were also quirks that suggested individual genius rather than committee design. Certain elegant solutions that felt like the work of one brilliant mind. Choices that made perfect sense but weren't obvious until you saw them implemented. The balance between professional standards and creative innovation suggested someone who had worked in corporate environments but wasn't constrained by them. The commenting style matched enterprise software development practices perfectly. Satoshi wrote headers that explained not just what functions did, but why they existed. He documented edge cases and potential problems. He left breadcrumbs for future developers who might need to modify his work. This wasn't someone who expected to maintain Bitcoin forever. The documentation suggested he was building something that other people would eventually take over. Someone who understood that sustainable software projects need clear communication and professional standards. Few people realize that the original Bitcoin code included features that wouldn't become important for years. Satoshi anticipated scaling problems before the network had enough users to cause them. He built in flexibility for protocol changes that the community wouldn't need until Bitcoin became mainstream. The database design revealed someone who understood how systems behave under stress. The way Bitcoin stored transaction data wasn't just functional, it was optimized for performance at scale. Someone had thought carefully about how the system would work when thousands, then millions of people started using it. The networking code was particularly sophisticated. Bitcoin needed to discover peers, maintain connections, handle network failures, and synchronize data across potentially unreliable internet connections. This isn't networking 101. This is enterprise-level distributed systems programming. Looking back, this was the real turning point in understanding Satoshi's background. The amateur genius myth couldn't survive technical scrutiny. Every aspect of Bitcoin's original implementation suggested someone with serious industry credentials, someone who had spent years in corporate programming environments, working on teams, building systems that needed to scale and survive. But all this professional expertise would soon become a liability. As Bitcoin grew, so did the attention, and attention was the last thing someone with Satoshi's background could afford. By 2011, that professional expertise had created something too big to control. April 23, 2011, a date that would mark the end of an era, Satoshi Nakamoto sat down at his computer and typed what would become his final message to the Bitcoin community. The email was simple, almost casual. "I've moved on to other things. It's in good hands with Gavin and everyone." 21 words that closed the book on the most mysterious chapter in financial history. But this wasn't a sudden decision. For months, Satoshi had been watching Bitcoin grow beyond anything he had imagined. Media outlets were writing stories about this strange new digital currency. Governments were starting to ask questions. The quiet experiment he had launched from the shadows was becoming a global phenomenon, and that terrified him. Think about what Satoshi was facing. Bitcoin was gaining serious attention from powerful people who didn't like competition. Government had a history of prosecuting anyone who tried to create alternative currencies. They had gone after the creators of Liberty Dollar and eGold. Now Bitcoin was bigger than both of those projects combined. Satoshi understood something that most people missed. His continued presence was becoming Bitcoin's biggest weakness. As long as he remained involved, Bitcoin would always be seen as Satoshi's project. It would never truly be decentralized. It would never be free from the influence of its creator. The decision to disappear wasn't abandonment, it was sacrifice. His final communications revealed the weight of this choice. Satoshi had become increasingly concerned about Bitcoin becoming too associated with one person. He worried that his involvement was preventing the project from reaching its full potential. He knew that true decentralization meant stepping away completely. The handover to other developers was methodical and deliberate. Satoshi gave Gavin Andrezen control of the source code repository. He transferred the network alert key, the closest thing Bitcoin had to administrative access. He made sure the technical leadership was in capable hands before he vanished. But he didn't just hand over the technical aspects. He was giving up something much more valuable: control, influence, the power to shape the future of his creation. Most people would have held on to that authority. Satoshi walked away from it completely. You can see how difficult this decision must have been. Imagine creating something revolutionary, watching it succeed beyond your wildest dreams, then choosing to disappear at the moment of triumph. No victory speeches, no interviews celebrating your genius, no acknowledgement of what you had accomplished, just silence. What makes this even more remarkable is what Satoshi chose not to do. His Bitcoin wallets contain between 750,000 and 1.1 million coins. Today that's worth tens of billions of dollars. He could have cashed out. He could have lived like a king for the rest of his life. Instead, those coins have remained completely untouched for over a decade. The wallets sit there like a monument to his principles. Every day that passes without those coins moving is another day Satoshi proves he meant what he said about decentralization. He's not coming back for the money. He's not planning to cash out when the price gets high enough. He's gone. The timing of his departure revealed strategic thinking that went beyond just avoiding government attention. Bitcoin was at a critical moment in 2011. It needed to prove it could survive without its creator. It needed to become something bigger than one person's vision. Satoshi's disappearance forced the Bitcoin community to grow up. They couldn't rely on their mysterious founder to solve problems or provide direction. They had to figure things out themselves. They had to become truly decentralized. And it worked. Bitcoin didn't collapse when Satoshi left. It got stronger. The community stepped up. New developers joined the project. The network kept growing. The vision became reality precisely because its creator had the wisdom to step away. Market analysts understand the genius of this move. They warn that revealing Satoshi's identity could cause massive volatility in Bitcoin's market. The revelation would centralize what was designed to be decentralized. It would undermine the very principles Bitcoin was built on. Think about what would happen if Satoshi suddenly reappeared. Every word he said would move markets. Every opinion would influence development decisions. His presence would recreate the central authority that Bitcoin was designed to eliminate. The vanishing act wasn't the end of Satoshi's story. It was the completion of it. He didn't just create Bitcoin. He ensured it would outlive him. He didn't just challenge the financial system. He made sure his challenge would continue long after he was gone. But even after 15 years of silence, investigators refuse to give up the hunt. They keep searching for new clues, new suspects, new theories. What they might be missing is whether the mystery itself has become more valuable than any answer they could find. The search continues, driven by investigators who refuse to accept that some questions might be better left unanswered. October 2024. 15 years after Satoshi vanished, another documentary promised to solve the mystery once and for all. HBO's Money Electric, The Bitcoin Mystery, pointed fingers at Peter Todd, a respected Bitcoin developer. The evidence? A chat message, where Todd commented on one of Satoshi's final posts, plus his use of Canadian English. And a later comment where he mentioned being the world's leading expert on how to sacrifice your Bitcoins. That's it. That was the smoking gun that would crack the case. Peter Todd's reaction was swift and brutal. He called the documentary ludicrous and accused the filmmaker of grasping at straws. Todd pointed out something crucial. The director had previously made a documentary about QAnon. QAnon-style coincidence-based conspiracy thinking here too, Todd said, dismissing the claims completely. But here's what struck me about this moment. After 15 years of investigation, this is what we're left with. Chat messages and word choices, the most sophisticated financial mystery of our time reduced to circumstantial evidence that wouldn't convince a jury in traffic court. Think about what this means. Investigators have followed every lead. They've analyzed writing patterns, sleep schedules, coding styles, and time zone data. They've studied British spelling and corporate programming standards. They've traced email exchanges and forum posts. They've examined the first transaction and the Genesis block message. Every single clue has led somewhere, but nowhere has led to Satoshi. You can see how this changes everything about the search. What if investigators have been asking the wrong question entirely? What if the mystery isn't meant to be solved? Here's where it gets interesting. Adam Back, one of the cypherpunks who influenced Bitcoin's creation, said something that changes how we think about this whole hunt. It is better that we don't know who Satoshi is, because it helps for Bitcoin to be considered like a digital commodity. A digital commodity. Think about what that means. Gold doesn't have a CEO. Oil doesn't have a founder you can arrest. If Bitcoin is going to replace traditional money, it needs to be bigger than any one person, even its creator. The anonymity has done something remarkable for Bitcoin's community. Without a central figure to worship or blame, people from every background have contributed to Bitcoin's growth. Developers, miners, users, businesses, they've all built something together. No single person could shut it down or change its direction, but there's something deeper happening here. The Bitcoin community has started treating questions about Satoshi's identity like blasphemy. They've created a reverence around the mystery itself. Ask too many questions, and you're missing the point. Satoshi acted selflessly. The mystery protects what he built. What if that's exactly right? And imagine what would happen tomorrow if Satoshi's identity was revealed. Every word that person said would move Bitcoin's trillion-dollar market. Every opinion would influence development decisions. Every government would know exactly who to pressure or prosecute. The decentralized dream would become centralized reality overnight. Few people realize that Satoshi may have understood this from the beginning. The mystery wasn't an accident. It was strategy. He didn't just create Bitcoin and disappear. He created Bitcoin to survive his disappearance. Look at what his anonymity has accomplished. Bitcoin has grown from a white paper to a trillion-dollar network. It's survived government crackdowns, corporate attacks, and internal civil wars. No single person could destroy it because no single person controls it, not even its creator. The investigation into Satoshi's identity has revealed something fascinating about human nature. We're obsessed with solving mysteries. We want to put faces to legends. We need someone to credit or blame for world-changing innovations. But what if some legends are more powerful when they remain legends? Think about it. Satoshi's story has become mythology. The mysterious creator who built the future of money, then vanished to let it flourish. That story inspires people in ways that knowing his real identity never could. The mystery has become Bitcoin's greatest feature. Not a bug to be fixed, but a design choice that protects everything the system represents. Satoshi didn't just give us digital money. He gave us proof that revolutionary systems can exist without revolutionary leaders. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to protect what Satoshi built. The question isn't who he was. The question is whether we're brave enough to build the decentralized future he envisioned. The tools are already in our hands. Every day, millions of people use Bitcoin without knowing or caring who created it. That's the point. Satoshi Nakamoto gave the world a gift worth trillions, then became a ghost to protect it. Maybe that's exactly how it should be. Think about what he accomplished. He didn't just create digital money. He proved that revolutionary change doesn't need revolutionary leaders. He showed us that the most powerful systems are the ones nobody controls. The real mystery isn't who Satoshi was. It's what we'll do with what they built. Every Bitcoin transaction is a vote for that vision. Every person running a node is choosing freedom over control. Some legends are more powerful when they remain legends.